future of construction's coming round. AI brains and massive steel.
Ready?
This is innovation that is truly real.
Ready?
CONEXPO! Yeah! Let the future...
All right, hey everybody. So I made that song last week in 3 minutes on Google Gemini, and it was a little surprise to Matt because we needed a walkout song. So I asked him a few weeks ago, hey, I'm a big baseball fan, so you think your at-bat song. I'm like, what would you do? You're like, I had to go like classic rock or something like that. What'd you say, like?
Motley Crue.
There you go, Motley Crue. And I was like, you know what? We can probably just make a custom song just for us, just for CONEXPO. So anyway, welcome. Thanks for being here. We're going to kind of just set the stage. This presentation is not about us. Matt and I are not the expert on all these topics, but we're going to run through what our guest speakers are going to be talking about today. So yeah, welcome to the global technology trends that are shaping the construction industry.
So I want to just set the stage. When John and I started putting this together, we're like, what can we do to talk about all the trends? So we looked at what are the biggest global construction technology trends impacting contractors of all sizes. And we boiled it down to artificial intelligence, drones, immersive reality, cybersecurity, autonomy, and robotics. And what we did was we found the best of the best subject matter experts to talk about these topics. They are all going to have 15 minutes, and we're hitting the high points. This is supposed to be a very fast, action-packed, informative session with the best. And if you want to follow up with them, John and I will give you our information at the end. You can reach us to connect you with those folks. But we're really excited to put this together and just excited for y'all to experience this.
So just a quick little thing, who we are. So I'm John Summers. I'm with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. We own and run CONEXPO-CONAGG. I'm responsible for our construction sector.
Matt Abeles, I am the Vice President of Construction Technology and Innovation for Associated Builders and Contractors. We're a merit shop association helping our contractor members be safer, more profitable, and help them win more work.
So we're going to go through these 7 topics really quickly here. I mentioned the song was made by AI, so are these slides. If you guys aren't paying attention to how quickly some of this stuff can be done, how it's advancing some of those mundane tasks like the pain that is PowerPoint, right? This is what we're showing. So first speaker is going to be Ty Findley from Ironspring Ventures. He's basically going to be talking about the impact of autonomy on the construction industry.
So then we have Zulq Malik. So Zulq is the CEO of SMARTBUILD. He's going to talk about how artificial intelligence impacts everybody and talking about just the different human interactions that it can play for not just contractors of all sizes, but businesses of all types. Then we've got Colin Guinn. He's going to talk about drones. This is one of the biggest topics we're talking about to our contractor community because the landscape is changing, but also the use case of drones is growing significantly. And the number of contractors using drones is not only constantly growing, but there's a lot of new tools out there.
Then we're going to welcome my friend Tim Bucher from a company called Agtonomy. They're implementing a lot of autonomous technologies on equipment. You're going to say, hey, we already had one on autonomy. This is what we're calling the quiet win. So it's all of the things besides helping an operator get better or removing the operator, like fuel efficiency and reduced rework. So those secondary benefits for automation.
So then we've got Nick Espinosa. He is the CEO of Security Fanatics. Nick is going to talk about cybersecurity. The one thing that we could not do this session without is cybersecurity because, believe it or not, construction is the second most targeted industry in the world. Then we've got Bharani, Rajakumar. He's going to hate me for messing that up. He's going to talk about immersive reality and how the future workforce is using immersive reality to get trained, upskilled, and what it means for job sites of the future.
And then to wrap it up, we're going to go with Vivin from Zacua Ventures. He's going to be talking about robotics. So not necessarily autonomizing equipment, more the robots that will be functioning on a job site. And he's going to give a little sneak preview into their upcoming construction robotics field guide report. So with that, let's bring out our first speaker.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Let's give him a round of applause.
Please welcome to the stage from Ironspring Ventures, co-founder and GP, Ty Findley.
Mic check, mic check. How are we doing, ConExpo? It's great to be here. My name is Ty Findley. I'm the co-founder and general partner of Ironspring Ventures. You know, ConExpo is a show about real-world builders building real-world infrastructure. It is not a show about technology, buzzwords, and fluff and whatnot. So I thought what I'd do is I started off with a video that I think kind of helps set the tone a little bit, why I had such a grandiose title, going from sci-fi to site ready, and making ultimately the case for heavy autonomous or autonomous heavy iron. So if we could play the video, please. Well, there we go. What you saw there was a 100% real-world operations. There was no AI imagery. There was no someone hiding behind a building teleoperating anything. That is actual operations from our portfolio company, AIM Intelligent Machines, and they have multiple deployments across continents now. And I just picked that out as one example. I could pick many other great innovators who are out on the show floor that are ultimately helping me make the case for what I want to chat with you today about is the 4 forces that I think converged in 2025 that are now only accelerating faster in 2026. The growing labor gap, hardware and AI advancements, the technical talent flowing in to complement the industry, and ultimately, I think the most important one we'll get to, the industry domain engagement that is occurring across the value chain faster than ever. So that's what we're going to chat about, and a special thanks to Silicon Valley Bank, helped us with some of the data you'll see during the presentation. And maybe right before we dive in, though, why am I here? Why is Ironspring Ventures talking about heavy autonomous iron? We're a venture firm that from day one, all we've ever focused on is the industrial supply chain. It's the only thing we know how to do. And specifically, construction is one of our key verticals that we've focused on since the beginning. But maybe also, more important, the people behind the fund. My partner Peter and I, we grew up in industrials. Our entire professional careers, in some form or fashion, has been moving forward industrial innovation. And maybe specific, since we're here at ConExpo, a lot of folks may be familiar with my partner, Peter's last name, Holt. He actually runs Holt Caterpillar, which is the largest dealership here in the country. And I really just bring this to light because I want to make the impression we care deeply about these industries, and we equally care deeply about bringing innovation into this industry the right way, collaboratively, and focused on partnership. So we'll let that be kind of the setup, but really kicking us off here with the labor gap. To just put into context before we talk about the labor gap, construction's having a moment. We all know this. We've heard about it over the last years, the AI race, data center build-outs, energy infrastructure. I think the number was $800 billion in construction spend since 2020 has increased. So massive, massive opportunity. But then I've got to click to the next slide. And the next slide is thanks to Matt and the great folks at ABC. We've all heard about, we understand there's a labor gap, but their latest figures say we're about 349,000 workers short this year. And I believe, if I remember the number for 2027, the forecast was somewhere around 450,000 workers that we would be short. And then if you go one more layer deeper, and you actually look up some Bureau of Labor statistics here about the actual operators, when you think about excavation or mining or crane operators, you can see on that 5-year CAGR chart, we're actually watching a deceleration in those occupations. And so I guess I'll end my point here to say, we've all talked about a labor gap and crisis for many ConExpos in the past. At some point, we just have to accept it's the new normal. So what are we going to do about it? And I think a part of that solution, amongst others, is a part of the autonomy discussion we're having today. So then moving us forward into the second category here, what about the hardware and the technology that's enabling some of the autonomy? So we've all seen these kind of cost burn down charts before. I'm sure the most sophisticated LiDAR sensors now you can see have practically become commodities. And I could have put different types of cameras and radars, et cetera. I could have picked any of them. But to put it in perspective, we've all seen a Waymo, or maybe you saw the cool Zulqs running around out here. The entire sensor suite that is sitting on top of those cars is about $20,000 as of last year. Just a few years ago, the last ConExpo, that was hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I guess my point with this slide is the cost profile is no longer the inhibitor. But this slide is critical. This one's really, really important here, and we'll get back to the logo everyone knows at this point. But in order for you to actually have a chance at autonomy, the amount of compute that has to occur at the edge, right at the machine level, astronomical. I mean, those images of running computer vision imagery or building a point cloud or building stockpile representations, you can't, let me boot this to the cloud, and I hope it comes back in time for that D10 not to run off the cliff if it's moving some quarry rock around. So the good part about this storyline, our friends at NVIDIA, that everyone knows, the big chip giant now that we're all talking about, their Jetson Thor product was released last year, and you can see it's an exponential curve, 7.5% or 7.5x compute power for their AI, and 3.5x energy efficiency. So truly, not to just say a bunch of technology buzzwords, the compute power is finally getting ready for prime time that's enabling a lot of the autonomy opportunity that we're looking at. And I'll finish it here because I think this is personal to all of us. Last year, we all know it was the ChatGPT 2025 moment. We've all used it personally, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or whatever you use. It's coming faster than ever into the B2B ecosystem. And if you don't believe me, just 2 months ago, Caterpillar CEO, Joe Creed, did an awesome job at CES, the world's largest electronic and consumer gadget show, basically outlining how they're now using Cat AI Assist on their products. And so you can hop in that Mini X, doesn't matter if you've ever used one before. Hey, Cat, turn the Mini X on. Hey, Cat, turn the lights on, right? That kind of ChatGPT moment, it's not going back in a bottle, and it's just showing the power of the technology that we're now dealing with. And then I would again give a shout out to that logo, NVIDIA. The reason he's on stage with Joe is because of that Jetson Thor chip that is enabling a lot of this. So the technology is ready. Moving on to my third point here, the complementary, and I really want to stress that word, the complementary technology talent that is flooding into the industry as we speak. I thought I'd just give a little bit of a vignette that maybe makes it a little more practical. Yes, we've all seen the Waymos, and if you remember Cruise that GM bought way back in 2016 for $1 billion, it's that green bar in a lot of people's car now driving the autonomy. All of that talent flywheel that started a decade plus ago, it's moving into this industry. And maybe if you don't believe me, you can then look at where they went after autonomous cars. The Class 8 freight truck ecosystem, Kodiak is now a publicly traded company, plus AI, Einride, I think they both have paperwork in on the street to go public pretty soon. And I'm telling you, because I'm seeing the talent as a VC, the next place it's headed is to that excavator, which I think is really exciting and the reason I'm on the stage today. So the talent flywheel is occurring. And if you don't believe me, here's a little bit of some research we did on sentiment analysis about these words like robotics or autonomous machines or construction. That's called an inflection. And I bet if I had time to stamp this data a couple months from now, I bet it's only higher than it is. So again, all the eyeballs that are on this ecosystem and are moving forward, what it lends itself to is this. These logos may not have been synonymous with ConExpos of the past, maybe here or there, but I can tell you there are alumni from each of these technology companies floating around the exhibit hall more than ever. And my point of this one is go engage. If you meet some of the alumni from these technology companies, they have so much to learn from this ecosystem's domain experience, and vice versa. I think you learn a lot from them. But just know they are here. They are looking to try to figure out a way to partner, and I think that's a really exciting thing for all of us. And then the final part, I am a VC, so I thought I'd throw this up here real quick. If the talent is flooding in, the money will follow. And the Waymo slide, I think it was like a $16 billion round they raised a couple months ago. That same flywheel, now in the construction industry last year, it was about $2.6 billion in the construction tech ecosystem, which was an all-time record. From what I'm seeing in the deal pacing and the deal sizings this year, you're gonna see that number get eclipsed in this year as well, which is, again, a really exciting thing in my opinion. Okay, so wrapping this up on the fourth vector though, and I said it, I would come back to it. The most important part of all of this that really gives me the conviction we're at a tipping point is the deep industry domain experience that is engaging across the value chain. And I'll go back to define that in a second. But I thought this would be a cool way to set up the discussion, because that saying of one slide, one picture doesn't look like the other type of thing, I would never try to trivialize how technically complex it is to make an autonomous vehicle go anywhere. But if you look on the left side, you've got stoplights, you've got signage, you've got crosswalks, you've got lots of contextual imagery that can allow those vehicles to do what they do. I think we would all, especially this ecosystem, a Western Australia quarry site, that's a different ballgame, right? We're talking dirty, dusty environments, unstructured environments. And if you don't have the domain experience to engage with that, it's an entirely different ballgame. But then it's also the opportunity that I think we're all looking ahead at. And so then maybe the really cool part about the engagement across the value chain, look at what the OEMs are doing. If you've missed this over the last couple of years, again, Caterpillar was at CES just 2 months ago explaining the 5 key products that they're gonna put autonomy in. And again, Joe was day 2 keynote right behind Jensen Huang from NVIDIA. Tell me that doesn't make a statement. Then you've got Komatsu. If you're not familiar with what they're doing with their EarthBrain joint venture in autonomy, incredible stuff, look it up. John Deere, credit due where it is. They've been very acquisitive in the autonomy space. Bear Flag Robotics is one a lot of people could probably remember from a few years ago. Liebherr and Volvo, whether it's autonomous or electric wheel loader. And then probably like the cool thing to go see on the floor over there is the Bobcat. They have their cabless design of an all-electric track loader. So again, I don't think you see this level of OEM engagement unless things are moving in that direction. But equally important, we talk about the value chain. The dealer and distributor network that sits between an end contractor who's moving the dirt and the OEM, they cannot be left off the discussion pattern, because this is really where the rubber meets the road with a lot of this autonomy. And so just as one example, I mean, that's a map of the really robust Caterpillar network all across the country. My partner Peter with Holt Caterpillar in the Texas territory. Or on the other side of the equation, what Cytec is doing with Trimble and Caterpillar, distributing the digital solutions that are involved with this. If you don't have this piece of the infrastructure brought along with the equation, we've really missed our opportunity. And so then again, as the venture capital guy, we took a lot of time, and you can find this research. We dropped it this morning. We did a lot of landscaping and mapping of just how much opportunity the startups are now seeing. And there's a lot of different categories on there, but if you look in the big blue box, those are the groups that are specifically, and most all of them are here, that are really going after autonomous operations. And so again, my plea here is go stop by their booths. They're not easy to find, right? They're early stage companies. They probably got like some stand with maybe one screen, but they're going to be a part of this discussion in this ecosystem for the long haul. So go spend some time with them if you can, is my ask. All right, we'll wrap them up, right? Tell them what you tell them, and then tell them what you told them. I just really engage, my call to action here is engage. This is the time where, again, this ecosystem has to collaborate across the value chain, and it's better for all of us if we do, because that labor gap is not changing. It is structural. There's gonna have to be solutions like autonomy come be a part of that. The technology, I think I made somewhat of a case. The technology is ready for prime time. There is tons of complementary talent that is flooding in and looking to learn, really just wanting to be a part of this ecosystem and be a part of the solution. And then finally, the catalyst of all of the domain knowledge that's being folded in from the OEMs, the dealers, the contractors themselves. Again, I don't think this is changing anytime soon. Thanks for letting me make my case here. Thank you, Groundbreaker Stage.
Please welcome to the stage from SMARTBUILD, founder and CEO, Zulq Malik.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Today was kind of a complicated presentation. There's been some awesome presentations that have happened all over for the last few days, people talking about some great opportunities, some great ideas. They're sharing ideas, and I said, well, how do I come along and follow these really brilliant companies, these smart people, and then get up and talk to you guys about the human-centered experience around AI? So the perspective of today's presentation is not what AI is going to do, but how do we make it human and make it interactive so that people realize it and experience it from a human perspective. and not just from a transactional nature, which is what we've done with this industry. Largely what we do is we have transactional relationships between the workers, between the equipment, between autonomy. All of these are transactions that are happening. And then we all wonder why people don't want to adopt in our industry. People are refraining from adopting industry. So this presentation is going to be about the human-centered experience and how AI is going to utilize that opportunity to advance those causes. So a little bit about me. All right, my name is Zulq Malik. I'm not a Silicon Valley yuppie that's coming up here talking to you about construction technology. I spent the last 30 years in the industry. So what does that really mean? I started off as a coordinator. I worked up the ranks. I had some great mentors. And from those mentors, they gave me great opportunities. And in 2005, I set up my own construction company. And what I realized is that while I wanted to work on some big-scale projects, I'm competing with large-scale established companies. I want to bid on airport projects, but I don't have the infrastructure yet. And how am I going to build my infrastructure around a startup company in the construction space? Right? So I realized I need to look at processes. I need to look at opportunities of where I can implement process, I can implement automation. And this was 2007. We didn't have a cloud yet. We did remote hosting if we had vested server in our office. So I said, hey, I'm going to hire myself a developer. And this developer is going to take simple steps, and he's going to make these transactions happen for me through a digital format. And that set their journey to what today is now SMARTBUILD Construction, which is a technology company. So we talk about inspirations. I get inspired from real-life experiences. And a lot of these real-life experiences are from being on the job site or what I've experienced as a contractor, but largely, I get a lot of inspiration from looking at my 8-year-old daughter and how she experienced the world. Last year, we were in Europe. She was out there with us. We went to Italy. She went to the Colosseum. Her experience was take a picture of the Colosseum, ask Gemini, what is this? And Gemini told her, this is a Colosseum. It was built so many hundreds of years ago, blah, 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 blah. She didn't open up a book. She didn't do this. What really made me think was, wait a minute, this is the future of our industry. These are the people that are looking for experiences. These are the people that are doing TikTok and they flip through videos like every second. They're going through another one. They're looking for an experiential thing. So why is it that our industry is not looking for experiences? We're just looking for transactions, right? On her 5th birthday, we took her to Disney, which you guys can see up here. If anyone's been to Disney before and they've taken their daughter, my daughter wanted to be a princess, so we went to the Bippity Boppity Boop experience. And they've transformed themselves. Disney is an entertainment company, but they're not an entertainment company, they're an experience company. And what they did was they transformed my daughter and they took her from a static image, and I just want you to indulge me for a second. She had a magic band on. She walked up, she checked in. Right away, her profile comes up on the screen. And when this comes up, they're like, oh my God, Zara, you're celebrating your birthday with us. Thank you so much and happy birthday. And my daughter's like, wow, they know it's my birthday. It's on the tag, right? They bring her into a room. They're like, by the way, who's your favorite princess? Cinderella. Great. They program the mirror. Guess what? The fairy godmother appears. Hi, Zara. Welcome, and we're going to get you ready for the ball today. My daughter's like, wow, she knows me. She knows my name. After we've done this experience, we get shuttered out. She's like, Daddy, I feel like a real princess. Can I get the crystal tiara? Sure. Experience went from $300 to $800 in a flash. That's the Disney delight, right? They found a way to vacuum some money in my pocket. So great, we don't work for Disney, we work in construction, or we're adjacent to construction. How does this make sense for us? It's real simple. Most hated thing to do by most workers in the field is to punch in, punch out on a job site. Some people are still doing it by paper, so that's its own challenge, right? Imagine they go to punch in on their clock, and they go, hey, David, it's your birthday in 21 days. We got you on the countdown. Punches in, he's like, okay, now it's a real experience. I'm not scared to share my information about being in here today. When he punches out, he goes, oh, by the way, David, don't forget your wife and your daughter. You need to get some milk, some breads, and some cookies on your way home. And you know what? Thank you for your day today, please. You don't currently get that with time clock solutions. You're not getting that from a paper-based experience, right? So then we wonder, why are these people resisting us, right? They don't want to give us this information. No, we haven't made it a human-centric experience for them to say, we should share this information with you, and what's in it for me? And the in it for me is, hey, crap, I had to get milk and bread and cookies for the kids. All right? So as we go down, I'm not going to convince you about AI. I don't think I need to. I think you've heard it a lot. You've heard everyone say to everyone, oh my God, AI's here, it's real, it's running. The pace that we're adopting, no one in history has seen adoption the way we have with AI. Now, there's a catalyst to that. And the catalyst is real simple. The internet was the forefront for what today is AI computing. It took us a while to figure out the internet was going to be useful. We didn't know what it was going to do for us. We didn't know how it was going to improve our lives. But now we have this thing called AI, and they're going, oh, look how fast it's going. Well, no. Somebody did all the groundwork. They set the stage for everyone, and they prepared us for this 40x spends and these $3 billion acquisitions. They set the tone for this. And now we're at a space where we're going, hey, well, AI's here. How is this going to make our lives better in the construction ecosystem? And I'm going to weave you guys through a journey. Because everyone's told us, construction guys, we don't adopt. We don't like new technology. And I challenge that proposition, all right? Evolution of tools on a job site. Who has a corded tool on a job site anymore? Probably no one. I remember the very first coring rig we bought. I won't say who the manufacturer was. You had to have a special electrical system to power it up, so you had to have a generator to give it power so you can core a hole. Those coring rigs now are battery operated. You can drill through a 3-foot wall with a battery-operated core rig. We have plate tampers out there that are battery-operated. And we realized, wait a minute, we need to come up with universal battery systems. And we're getting that feedback from who? The people in the industry. We're watching them on ergonomics and say, how do we make things lighter? How do we make it easier? So when people say construction doesn't want to adopt, we want to adopt, but when it's purposeful and purpose-built for us. How we communicate on the job site, the evolution. I remember fax machines, all right? Forget the pen and paper, I still have that. We migrated from fax machines onto cell phones, and then we got into smartphones. And today, largely, I don't think anyone does not have a smartphone. I was holding out for the longest time, but I had to get one because I had a technology company, and people said, you can't show up with a phone with a burner. It was a bad idea, all right? But what's gonna be next? How do we capture more information? What's gonna really catalyze us? What's going to take us to the next level? So, as you indulge me a little longer, I want to go through case studies. We are surrounded by, in a commercial market, use cases of virtual assistants that are all being powered by AI. I've been driving a Mercedes-Benz for a series of times. Why? Because I work really hard and I figured I should have a nice car to drive. That was the excuse for me, all right? But what happened is I got accustomed to the creature comforts that come from the vehicle. Now, it's not just in Mercedes. Toyota has it, Tesla have it. On your birthday, you'll get birthday goodies show up on your screen. Confetti popping out to you. Valentine's Day, which was less than a month ago, the hearts are falling off the screen. They're creating these digital engagement opportunities and experiences so that you are more connected to your vehicle. When's the last time somebody found a keypad to key in the phone number? They actually ask, hey Mercedes, or hey Toyota, or hey GM, can you dial this phone number for me? No one's going backwards. So it's existing, it's out there in the market space. But in construction, like we talked about, we could start our Bobcat by just talking to, hey, start my Bobcat. Well, you could do that with a car literally 10 years ago. So what's our current reality on the construction site? The simple reality is that we got a communication problem, all right? We have a bottleneck of information. It's bottlenecking into usually one or two individuals that are responsible for pushing that data forward. And yet the entire industry says we should make data-informed decisions. And the reality is that we can't make data-informed decisions because we're getting information from one or two people on a job site. We discount the 100 or 200 people that are also walking around the job site that have information and nuggets of data that we need to capture and that we need to put into our platforms. So I don't need to convince you that there's a problem with the data transfer of information. It's existing, it's real, but it's getting better. So how's AI going to intersect with this, right? Real simple. Conversational-based AI tools. We've developed it. I'm not here to pitch my product, but it's more about we're using AI to leverage the disparity that we have of how we connect data into platforms and into different models. Guys in construction don't want to type. They don't want to use a keyboard. They got fat, pudgy fingers. They can't use the phone. That's a reality of our lives. The phone wasn't designed for us, all right? But what if they can talk to it? What if they got structured information, structured questions? Depending on the answer of your question, it leads you down a different rabbit hole, so you'll give me more information. And what if I told you that we have clients of ours that complete safety documentation in 2 minutes versus the 15 or 20 that we're doing before? They're more apt to give you this information, right? This is not just for the guy in the office, not just for the site super on the job. This could be expanded on scale to anyone on the job site. We see a connected experience with equipment, all right? Caterpillar announced it. They've got their AI tool that you can talk to it while it's in the bot. There's a whole generation that, I'll be honest with you, I had a civil division. We didn't just have Caterpillar equipment, we had other manufacturers. So how do I have uniformity of my data going across multiple pieces of equipment, right? And a lot of the tool stacks that are being built today are being built so that they're universal, so they can be compatible with anyone's tools or anyone's products. So you know what, if you get out of a Hitachi and you jump into a CAT, the information is still gonna come the same way into your back-end database. So why does this matter? The reality is there's a bottom line behind all of this. More information is gonna drive better decisions. Anyone that's disputing that, I can't really help you through that process, but once we get to a stage where we can make it easier, we take away the friction, and we get people talking to your devices, communicating on a human level, we'll get more information, and as we get more information, we're gonna get better decisions. So why am I doing this? I'm not on an AI wave. I'm actually looking at the next generation. My daughter's 8. And I would really like that one day she follows daddy's footsteps and she wants to get engaged in construction. So that's roughly 17 to 18 years from now, at best, maybe 20. Her world is gonna include autonomous equipment. Her world is gonna have robotics. Her world is also gonna have a lot of AI in it, all right? But her world's gonna need humans, because this generation of workers and that are up and coming, they're looking for human experiences. That's why they take pictures of their food and they upload it and put it somewhere. That's the experience that they're looking for. So I'm hoping you guys were able to get something out of this. You know what? I consider us the nerds that actually build the technology to help enable all of you guys to do what you guys need to do out there. And I'm hoping we can stay in touch, and you can reach us out at the contact information. Just scan the QR code. Thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage from Guinn Partners, CEO Colin Guinn.
All right, hi there, how you guys doing? Colin Guinn, nice to see you all. So today we're gonna talk a little bit about drones. It's a bit of a big topic, especially in this past year. There's a few different inflection points that are all kind of coming together at once. So there's a lot of different ways we could approach this. I'm not gonna talk much about how we're using the data in construction and how we're integrating it into the BIM workflows and doing volumetric scans and stuff like that, because I think most of you guys are probably already doing it. We're gonna talk a little bit more about the fact that, I think it's kind of an obvious that they're gonna be coming, construction site infrastructure going forward, and that they're pretty much ubiquitous, and they will be more and more so going into the future as, we have autonomous heavy equipment, creating digital twins of the construction site, pre-planning before dirt work, during the as-built, doing, clash detection, things like that. There's just several reasons for it, but we need to be creating these digital twins, right? As we move from 2D kind of pages and models into kind of thinking more in 3D. Drones obviously will be a big part of that. So what we're gonna talk about is kind of what's happening in the drone space and how does that relate to the construction industry, because there's a couple of big shifts with kind of NDAA compliance and kind of the grounding of China-made drones and specifically DJI, which is kind of 95% of all the drones that are being used in construction and have been for the last 10 years. So we get a lot of questions, hey, what do we do next? Like, what do we do now? We've just grounded our entire DJI fleet. What does this mean for us going forward? Is this gonna be long-term? Then there's another huge inflection point that's been kind of in the works for well over 10 years. And we've all been waiting and hearing this thing called beyond visual line of sight. Has anyone in here heard that term before? Raise your hand if you've heard BVLOS. Okay, so we got some drone people in here, because that's, there's not a whole lot of people talking too much about it yet. Obviously, people in the industry have been looking for this for a long time. And what does that mean is, when are drones going to start operating like the little autonomous robots that they are, right? So those are kind of the two things we're going to talk about here, and how they, how they converge. So, obviously, this is what I mean by the operating model is about to change. So, all right, so how did we get here? I'll tell you a little bit about myself and kind of how we came here together as an industry. So back in 2012, I hired an engineering firm in Shenzhen, China, to build a 3-axis stabilized gimbal for my aerial photography company. That 13-person company was DJI. And they were engineers that made a little flight controller. We ended up developing the first 3-axis stabilized camera gimbal. And then I founded DJI North America. I was the CEO of DJI North America and the Chief Innovation Officer for the global company. So I worked on the product definition, product design. So back then, we were really using drones for aerial content creation. That's like the most simple use case for a drone is just fly around, get pictures, get video. Not necessarily the use case we're using them for in construction. Obviously, there's some of that. It can be handy to just see the site and get an idea of what's going on. But the use cases for construction are much more involved workflows with the data. And so we're going to talk about how that works. So back in 2012, we worked on the Phantom 1. By 2014, we had cameras built in. So look at 2014 to 2020 was really making the hardware easier and easier to operate. And then 2020 to 2024, you're getting mapping is becoming much more simple. You've got much more integrated workflows, not nearly as, early days with like the Zenmuse with the S800, drone, you would have to kind of sidecar channel a different file for your telemetry, and you'd have to match up, what telemetry and metadata was going with which imagery, so you could run these kind of post-processing photogrammetry tools. It was pretty complicated. Now it's pretty push button. But in 2024, we started seeing a big trend toward, some concern around, where these drones are being made, where they're being manufactured, where the data is being captured, how the data is being used, especially in some of the largest contractors in the country that are building critical infrastructure, airports, military bases, nuclear infrastructure, nuclear energy sites, et cetera. It's pretty important where that data is going, right? So this is kind of an inflection that we see happening here. So first of all, a lot of people ask, like, why did DJI dominate in the way that they did? And I think a lot of it was timing and luck. But essentially what happened was, as we developed tools for aerial cinematography and content creation, the drone industry really took off from 2012, 2013. DJI is doing like $3 million in revenue, selling some flight controllers for remote control helicopters. And then, over the course of those next 4 years, as we developed the Phantom, which was the first kind of ready-to-fly consumer drone, and then the Zenmuse gimbals, where you could now capture, 3-axis stabilized video. As that happened over those 4 years, the company grew to $1 billion in revenue before anyone else was really doing a whole lot in the space. And it was a combination of using kind of Western marketing, product strategy, user experience design, and then Eastern engineering and manufacturing capability, which, make no mistake, Eastern engineering and manufacturing is very, very good. So a combination of those things really got DJI off to a big start. And then there was just massive spending and reinvestment into R&D. And during that time, they solved some really challenging parts of drones, which are, stabilization of payloads, integration of payloads, the link reliability, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have, moved from DJI drones to other NDAA compliant drones. You've probably seen that the link is just not what you're used to with DJI. So that was a big early initiative that we had back in 2014 or so. We made a big investment in developing our own chip at DJI. So there was a lot of those early things that had to come together to make the drone simple to operate. And that really just put DJI way far ahead of really anyone else in the space. And it would kind of, I liken it, because obviously my history with DJI from, during that time, I have a lot of people come to me and say, hey, we got to make a drone to, make a replacement for the Mavic. And it's like, you don't understand how complicated that, proposition is. There's so many different technologies that have to be solved for that to happen. And so, the reset, which is that, a lot of people also ask me, hey, how long is this going to last? Do we need to ground our fleet? Are we going to keep flying them? We saw a company called Anzu that was basically making a kind of a technology sanitized version of an old DJI drone. We're going to see something like that happen. Do we really need to get rid of these things? Do we go to something else? So obviously, I work closely. We're in Austin, Texas, where Armored Futures Command is, and DIU, and I have a company called Guinn Partners where we do a lot of product to market engineering and product development consulting. We've developed a lot of one-man flying drones that you sit inside of, to watercraft and foiling systems, and we work a lot with the government. And what I can say is that the risk is real. The concern is real, and it's not going to be a matter of kind of checking some boxes and finding some way to get DJI tech to be approved through some loophole. I think that the concern is probably strong enough and it's going to last long enough that, it's probably not going to be the case that DJI and drones, some version of that is going to be available. So there is going to be a shift over time. And I don't know, how familiar you guys are, how much you're using them in your own practice, but some of the contacts that we've worked with for over a decade in the space are with some of the largest construction companies here in America. And, they're getting letters from Congress asking for, proof of how the drones are being used, what their SOPs are, what their security protocols are. And they're getting kind of a, hey, to be clear, we do not want these drones used on any of these, types of projects. And for the construction companies, it becomes challenging because you can't really have a whole drone workflow for one type of construction project and then a different drone workflow with different hardware and different software for another type of project. So a lot of these construction companies are just switching to something completely different. So that's the problem. So today's problem is that replacing DJI is not super simple, right? DJI does make a product that is very push button easy. As you can see, with the Dock 3, for instance, and a Matrice 4TD or a Matrice 4D coming out of the dock, there are some pretty push button options for creating, high quality meshes and point clouds. You've got the L2 or the L3 payload on, if you're doing LiDAR stuff, that's really hard to beat for price per performance. And the challenge is that in the construction industry, like we said, in content creation, which is probably still the largest market for DJI. As you see, everything you watch on TV, all these videos that people are playing before me all have drone imagery in them, right? That use case is a little bit simpler. You're just kind of flying around in real time, moving a 3D sensor around in space, capturing content, and then everything you're doing in your post-production workflow, whatever. With construction and creating a digital twin where you need, orthorectified imagery, you need it to be survey grade, you need ground control points, you need RTK or PPK, you need high quality telemetry and the correct metadata, and you need it to be lined up with all the images correctly. You need to go through some kind of post-process. Maybe you're going into Trimble or you're going into Propeller or Drone Deploy or whatever. It's just a more complex system with a lot more software, firmware, hardware that all have to work together than just capturing content, right? And so a lot of the NDAA compliant drones can really solve that content capturing need. And you see Tab with FreeFly, for instance, they've been around for a long time in the content game. They make amazing products. So they're kind of getting out ahead and coming up with, working with, high quality Sony sensors and Alterium flight controllers and, some other LiDAR payloads. But the challenge still is that these systems are a lot more expensive, they're heavier, they've got fragmented software stacks, and they just don't have the same kind of DJI level of polish, right? So what's gonna happen, and tomorrow's solution is Part 108, there's a big change coming in the way you operate drones that is gonna be very different than how drones are operated now. So it's do we go and solve for buying a new totally different drone system for Part 107 when we know Part 108 is coming. Part 108, as you can see, the exemption started coming out back in 2019. Part 107 was 2016. That was the first time we were technically allowed to use drones commercially, even though people were doing it for many years before that. So we'll talk a little bit about the difference here. Part 107, that was kind of phase one. That's pilots operating drones, controllers, portability, cases, putting them on the ground, using them for these kind of ad hoc missions, taking the data, taking the memory card out, doing some kind of data processing. So it unlocked the ability to use drones on construction sites, but it kind of caps scale because it's very human involved. Part 108 is going to be very different. You're going to see Part 108, there's no pilots mentioned at all in the Part 108 Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. They are operators, they are people that are sitting in control centers that might be operating 10 or 50 or 100 different drones and looking more for just edge cases and things that aren't working. So Part 108 is going to be, drones are going to be completely redeveloped for being the little Roombas that they should be. Think of it as a Roomba that just flies over the construction site, sucks up data, and magically makes the model in the cloud. And with that, you're going to see a big difference here where weekly flights become daily, daily flights become continuous. So now you're getting these 3D, kind of digital twins that are made autonomously much more frequently than they are now, which allows AI change detection and clash detection, and all of those tools work much better than if you're doing a monthly or weekly capture, because the cost of that data capture is going to come down by 90%, and then another 90%, and then another 90%. It's going to just keep happening orders of magnitude where that cost is going to become negligible to actually capture the data, which is what you're doing with the drone in the first place. So future job site, sorry, I'm getting over a cold here. But the future job site, you're going to see autonomous drones in action. You might see less and less construction companies needing to own their own drone hardware, and more networks and services where you're just ordering data and saying, give me data over my site twice a day, and you might be paying 1/5 or 1/10 what it's costing you to run your own drone program today. So the drone kind of disappears, the data layer remains. So what you should be doing right now is audit your fleet for NDA risk exposure, of course. I wouldn't spend too much on Part 107 drone solutions because there's going to be a lot changing over the next 1 to 2 years. I would invest heavily in source agnostic secure data pipelines. So no matter where the drone data is coming from, own your pipeline, own your processing, how you're creating the data, how you're creating the value from the data in those transformations. And then prepare your workflows because this drone data is going to get more ubiquitous and cheaper over time. So those are the things I'd be focused on, is really the workflow of what you're going to do with that data. So at Guinn Partners, we publish ebooks. We work with companies of all sizes and shapes all over the world, helping them develop their drone technologies, their drone strategies, robotics strategies, IoT. But we've put out a number of ebooks over the years, and we're working on an ebook now that is from Part 107 to autonomy, and kind of how to get ready for the new kind of Part 108 regulations and how drones will be used on construction sites and otherwise going into the future. So if you want to scan that QR code, you can sign up. You get a free copy of the ebook when it comes out for being here at the show. But that's my quick one on drones, and hope some of that was helpful. So thank you.
Please welcome to the stage CEO and co-founder of Agtonomy, Tim Butcher.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tim Butcher, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Agtonomy. And yes, I'm sitting here with a bottle of wine. You might be wondering why. So in Ty's opening, he had logos of a lot of different companies, Apple, Microsoft, you name it, and how alum from these companies are coming into these industrial markets. I'm here to say that I'm actually one of those alums. I was in executive roles at Microsoft, at Apple. I actually worked twice for Steve Jobs, once at Next and once at Apple, as well as Dell, working for Michael Dell. And that does not give me any credibility at ConExpo. A bottle of wine does, because I'm also the owner of a farming operation in California, and I used to own a construction company too. And that's what gives me chops. And that's actually why my company, Agtonomy, can work in these industries, these industrial markets, to deliver solutions that OEMs, customers, need today more than ever. So that's a little bit about me. And I had a decision to make, because I also make olive oil. And I said, oh, I can bring a bottle of olive oil or a bottle of wine. I said, I'm going to Vegas, it's wine. So the other interesting thing about this bottle is that it is 100% autonomously farmed. So it tastes better, of course. Now, Agtonomy is a physical AI company working in industrial markets to bring autonomous solutions to end customers in agriculture, in land maintenance, in construction, and other industrial markets. But we do not believe in building robots. We do not believe in building retrofit kits. We believe only in working with tier 1 OEMs who have to win. And they have to win because they are the trusted brands in the industry. If you are the buyer of equipment at Bechtel, you're not gonna buy a bunch of tractors from a startup company. You have to purchase from those trusted brands because they design and manufacture the best equipment for these harsh environments. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, a lot of the construction equipment manufacturers also make incredible agricultural equipment. So I think that's why I'm here too. But not only do they design and manufacture the best equipment, they have a dealer network, which Ty also mentioned in his speech, and how important that is, because you need the parts and the service to keep this equipment going for the livelihood of your business. So super important. And that takes years, that takes decades, that takes over a century to build up. And then the third thing that's really important is financing. Because if I'm gonna buy a $3.2 million D11, I'm not necessarily gonna pay cash for that. So the tier 1 OEMs, they have banks. By the way, I learned that from Michael Dell. I was acquired, one of my companies was acquired by Michael Dell, and I was all excited, and I was sitting down the first week with Michael, and I said, oh, we're gonna do this innovation and that innovation. He said, calm down, Tim. You know, we're just a bank. And that's really what helped Dell really scale, is through that financing. So that's a little about me, a little bit about Agtonomy. I'm here to talk about the quiet wins of autonomy. I'm not here to talk about autonomy, because I think plenty of folks have talked about that. But one thing you may not know is that Agtonomy is actually out there with tier 1 manufacturers for years now, commercially operating. So we have Agtonomy-enabled units. We're like an ingredient brand, right? We're behind the scenes. We help these tier 1 manufacturers accelerate their digital transformation because, like I said at the beginning, they have to win. And so it's really important in these industrial markets like construction to not just talk about autonomy or not talk about the benefits of autonomy, but you have to show me. And that's what we're all about at Agtonomy, is showing that these things can work. So this is a short video that I'll play just to show you some of the commercial operations. You know, we operate with growers all over the United States and Australia. And you see here, it's not just one vehicle, it's multiple vehicles. So the construction operator is not just one person managing one big piece of equipment, but it's basically being the conductor of the symphony. And that's really where the ROI comes into play. So these are commercial operations that are out there from incredible companies like Kubota, as well as Bobcat. So it's all great to have the voice-activated AI agent in the cab, but that's really a small application of AI. The physical AI and actually having full autonomous vehicles is where it's all is what it's all about. So, let me tell you about the synergies between construction and agriculture. They're both dirty jobs, and nobody wants to work in those industries. And that's why we need autonomy. So there's a lot of analogs between these two industries. And what we learn in construction, we can apply in ag, and what we learn in ag, we can apply in construction. So given there's a lot of commercial vehicles operating, what are some of the things that we've learned that were surprises? And I will admit, when we first started, I had no idea about some of these additional benefits, these quiet wins, until years of commercial operation and getting data, and I'm talking zettabytes of data, and hearing directly from the customer as well as what they're finding. And some of these were big surprises to me, and I want to share those surprises with you now. One of the foundational layers, though, that autonomy brings is consistency. Newsflash, computers are better than humans. I had the pleasure of seeing Joe Creed, the CEO of Caterpillar, award Brian Hayden to be the best operator in the world here at ConExpo. Brian is the best equipment operator in the world. But computers are better than Brian, but we still need Brian. What we need is to clone Brian, and that's where having Brian be that conductor as opposed to just playing one instrument comes into play. And consistency allows for the repetitive motion. Every turn is perfect. Every RPM setting is perfect. Every scoop is perfect. And that yields a huge ROI because it's not just about the labor replacement, it's about the consistency of that labor too. So with that as a backdrop, I want to talk about 6 things that are sort of the quiet benefits of autonomy. And these are real benefits from real data, from real commercial operation. The first one I call invisible waste. There is a ton of invisible waste in construction and in agriculture. Some of the things are idle time. When equipments are idling, they're burning fuel, and fuel is expensive. And so if you can reduce idle time, which autonomy does do, you're saving a huge amount in fuel. And current customers are citing between 15 and 20% reduction. Now, if you have a fleet of multi-million-dollar mining trucks, that adds up to tens of millions of dollars a year. So significant savings there. You're also saving in breaks. You don't have to go to the bathroom. These autonomous machines don't. But the conductor can, and while their conductor's going to the bathroom, the machines can keep working. There's also not a lot of rework because of that consistency. So you're not wasting time on that. So you're reducing idle time, you're saving fuel, and this was actually a surprise to me. I didn't think that it would be that significant, and it's gonna get even better as the feedback from the engines and applying the exact amount of torque, the exact amount of energy you need to that scoop based upon the density of the soil will continue to evolve and get better. We've all heard of worker health and safety. I learned a new word recently. The acronym is WBV, and that stands for whole body vibrations. Have any of you ever heard of that? Okay. If anyone is from Brazil, you may have heard of that, because Brazil has new regulations that limit the amount of WBVs a human body can sustain. And you even have to pay up to 20% extra for workers who are in machines that vibrate, and construction equipment vibrates. But it's not just in the cab that you're keeping people safe from the vibrations and the heat and the noise and the dust and all the other things. It's also outside of the cab. And in construction, the majority of accidents actually occur outside of the cab. So if you have an autonomous piece of equipment, you have a lot of sensors around it, whether they're radar, like what you can see on some Bobcat equipment these days, more cameras, which are now pervasive all around. And so more eyes means less hits, and that's super important. So obviously the human aspect is critical. Now you can take the skilled operator, put them in a Ford F-150 pickup truck that's air conditioned, and they can conduct that symphony on that construction site. But there's another type of health that's really important in construction and in agriculture, and that's the machine health, equipment health and utilization. We're hearing from customers that, hey, we're finding that the autonomous tractors don't have as much maintenance problems. And one of the reasons for that is because computers have much more advanced telemetry, giving them feedback, knowing when there might be problems before there are problems. And also, they can operate the equipment more smoothly. And so you're not abusing the equipment. And if you have a $10 million piece of equipment, you do not want that to be abused. So you can get longer life out of the equipment. That was a bit of a surprise to me as well. There's also the productivity piece where, you can run now 24 hours a day, and the equipment utilization, when you have these assets sitting around, can now be much higher utilization, which is huge in construction. It's huge in agriculture, because there are things called weather that come up where you need a big workforce to punch out, that particular dig or get that particular activity done in a crop. And that's super, super important. And then, as I said, you also get better utilization because you're not having to do repeat stuff. So you're actually getting the job done and not having to repeat parts of it. So your machine doesn't get as much wear and tear. So this one, I think, is huge, especially for the construction industry where the equipment tends to cost a little bit more. One of the other things that I love about autonomous solutions that we're hearing is now, you can actually, right now in construction, it's a big deal to train skilled operators. And a lot of times we train them on simulators. And that's all great. But imagine if you can actually get work done while you're training novices. So you can put them in autonomous vehicles, and now you have oversight by the computers, essentially guardrails. So they're learning how to do their job, and you are getting work done, and they're becoming experts within hours, not months. So really fascinating, and it has a big economic benefit as well. The fifth one is about size. One of the reasons why we have big tractors in agriculture, and by the way, I should clarify that when I talk about agriculture and autonomy, we're only working in permanent crops, which are much harder than row crops, the big open fields where you can actually see GPS and see the sky for GPS and whatnot. We have to operate with pure visual and no internet and all kinds of other crazy stuff. So it's a much more difficult problem. And we haven't had the compute until recently, as Ty was showing. So, but this next one is about size. One of the reasons why we've gotten big tractors in agriculture is because it's difficult to get a workforce, on a many thousand-acre ranch in the middle of pick your state. And I don't call them the flyover states, by the way. They're important states. And so you need to get as much done with one worker as you could, and so tractors became bigger and bigger and bigger. But what if the tractors can be autonomous? Now you can take that one person, and they can be, again, the conductor, and you can do swarming, right? And there's some huge benefits to this. Some simple ones, like I've heard about some of the costs of moving some of this large construction equipment and all the pilot cars and permits and everything you have to have. The smaller equipment, you can just throw on a truck and move it around pretty easily. And you also get redundancy, which is huge. So autonomy opens up a whole new world there, and we're already hearing it from customers. And the thing I'm the most proud of is a younger workforce is being attracted. And this is real. You've all heard of the silver tsunami phenomenon in construction. It's exactly the same in agriculture. And pick your numbers, 40% over the next 5 years, 50% over the next 7 years. Let's just say, for every 10 people that are retiring, we're only getting about 2 people in. And so this is gonna widen that labor gap more and more and more. And what's really cool is the customers that we are now working with, they're not advertising for tractor driver jobs. They're advertising for construction tech, ag tech jobs. And one of the requirements is video game experience. And so we have customers who have, operators in their 20s who've never actually been on a tractor, operating tractors. And this is the future, and this is something that will sustain us as a construction industry, as an agricultural industry. So you could categorize all these 6 things around 3 areas: economic, environmental, or social. But the reality is all of these things have an economic impact. And it's really cool to see now these real autonomous solutions operating commercially and what we're learning. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, folks. We got some great stuff coming. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of the show.
Please welcome to the stage from Security Fanatics, Chief Security Fanatic, Nick Espinosa.
Good afternoon, everybody. Come on now. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, ConExpo. I am Nick Espinosa. I'm the Chief Security Fanatic of Security Fanatics. We do all things cybersecurity, cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, infrastructure, government compliance, political risk. We are busy. But I want to talk today about the future, what the next 5, 10, 20 years looks like. A little bit of cybersecurity, but it's important to understand what we are walking into as a species, especially in construction. Because if you didn't know, you are part of the engine of the economy, and I'm going to talk about that too. So think about it this way. There are now over 8 billion people in the world. The fastest growth our species has ever had is in the last 30 years. 6 billion of us are online and interconnected. We speak 6,900 languages on this planet. And the one common thread that we have is nerd. We all speak nerd. 6 billion of us anyway. This is who we are, and we are continuing to grow. On top of this, we have a huge necessity for technological innovation. Clothing, feeding, sheltering everybody on this planet. This is why you are one of the backbone industries of the globe. And we are failing right now. We are failing, and we don't have to look at rural places in Asia or Africa. You can look at Appalachia here in the United States and see these problems happening. These are the solutions that we need to come up with. We need to fix as a society. And you are at the forefront of this because you're going to build not just the data centers, but the homes for us to live in as well. On top of it, we have huge changes in age demographic. The boomers were an explosion in population. The greatest generation came back from World War II and got busy. We all know this. But by virtue of that, we are seeing birth rates change. Gen X, which is what I am, had less kids than the boomers, as did the millennials and Gen Z, and now Gen Alpha, born 2012 to 2025. So, by virtue of this, we have shifting changes in understandings of what it means to work, of what it means to interact, of what it means to be one-on-one with a human being. I say the kids don't want to get off the couch because studies show that 45 to 55% of all youth want to sit on the couch and they want to be creators. It's the truth. How do you get them out to the job site? And my colleague in the last presentation said, you're looking for gamers. That's great. But we're going to talk about the problems that we have generationally. If I want to sit on the couch and I want to make videos and put them somewhere, and feel free to subscribe to my OnlyFans, $19.99 a month, I'll nick all the time. Think about what that does to the economy. Is that wealth generation? No. Think about what construction does to wealth generation. Think about a television show, a movie set. We have to hire carpenters in construction to build sets, but we also have to hire caterers and lawyers and advertisers, and attorneys are going to get those too. But if we are on the couch making videos and people are sending us money, it's not wealth generation, it's wealth transfer. And longitudinally, that is a problem for society. Because if I'm on the couch, OnlyFans, YouTube, whatever, they get their small cut, but I'm not hiring. I'm transferring. On top of this, We have a huge focus on technology adoption and innovation, but we have serious labor gaps. We know this. We know the trades are hurting right now for this. And it's not just that. We have problems hiring in cybersecurity and other verticals as well. And it's in part as we are coming up and we are bringing up these kids and we are offering them to be games on site with autonomous vehicles, which is really cool, to be perfectly honest. This is something that we have to address. These are the conversations that we have to be having, and we're not. And so by virtue of that, think about this. And I'm not going to go through AI and automation completely. I've got plenty of colleagues that have been on this stage and will be on this stage talking about that. But understand this from a societal perspective. It's booming, right? We're going to have 15% increased productivity right out of the gate, 12% reduction in costs. That's a good thing, and nobody's complaining about this. But we also have different issues, because if we are looking at long-term automation, look at the manual labor markets. We're not stopping having kids. I was literally just having this conversation about my 19-year-old. What is she going to do? Is she going to be a programmer? Absolutely not. The AI can build the programs, test the programs, check the programs, and actually make style choices for me. I don't even have to code anymore. I don't. Why would she be a software developer? Why would she be a radiologist? The AI can do it. Why go to school? Why waste my money putting her in college for a job that'll be outsourced to artificial intelligence that will work 24/7, 365, doesn't stop, doesn't need a break? This is what we are talking about. On top of it, we have the use of autonomous vehicles rising on the job site. You know, I think that's interesting, but we have to protect these as well. I've done live hacking demonstrations on autonomous vehicles, drove one into a wall. It's kind of why I'm standing here right now. And we'll get to cybersecurity, but we need to talk about these things, because I do think the benefit is job safety, and others here have talked about this. Job safety is key, it's critical. I believe that humans have intrinsic value. I don't want to see them harmed for doing their jobs, and I don't think neither do you. Most of us don't. But let's talk about this, because even though we are having things like cybersecurity shortages, labor shortages like I just mentioned, the requirements for cybersecurity on construction are rising. And they are rising fast, especially here in the United States. But the United States is not alone. So there has been a huge push for supply chain due diligence. You might be that company that has got larger companies above you, GCs, whatever they are, and they're saying, hey, answer these 200 questions to prove that you are secure, you are mature in your security, and you can handle this. But are you doing that to your supply chain? If you're a smaller business, are you going to your suppliers, your cloud providers, and doing that? You should. It's good for everybody. I want my data safe too, and I don't have 1,000 employees. You know, on top of it, we have the military. The military has taken construction by basically storm. I have been on stage for the last 5-6 years yelling at the top of my lungs about CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. It is taking the world of construction by storm. There are 300,000 companies in the defense industrial base, 300,000 that are required to get a certification of some kind. Do you even know this? This has been a huge problem in construction, because you're building the military bases, you're maintaining the military bases, you are critical to the warfighting capability of the United States. And they want their data safe with you, because they are tired of foreign governments eating their lunch technologically every day. That's on you now. And it's live as of November 10th last year. On top of it, it's basically disrupting foreign entities as well. This is having an impact on the global supply chain, which directly impacts the economy of the United States as well. Because we can't, to previous talks, buy DJI drones. That's the McCain Act, the Defense Production Act. This is cybersecurity 101 for the government. On top of this, basically we are now seeing large corporations force the smaller ones to basically become certified in some way, shape, or form. Not just a test, not just glibly write on a piece of paper, oh sure, whatever, and take the risk that you get breached. You are actually looking at certifications. Insurance companies also are getting killed due to data breaches, as are the reinsurers. So what do? They up their requirements. This is where we're at with cybersecurity. And cyber insurance is a hot mess. And it's going to keep rising. And so let's talk about cybersecurity for construction, because it really is mission critical. I really do mean that. This digital transformation that construction is going through is amazing. I think it's absolutely incredibly amazing. It's fundamentally reshaping how we approach construction. I've worked with construction companies from small to utterly massive. Some of the large platforms you're using for collaboration have been clients of mine as well. It's amazing. I absolutely love this. But if we are looking at this, increasing dependencies are basically making us more connected. When I'm talking basically about data flow with my clients, the foremans have iPads. They don't have folders that they write in anymore. You know, job site boxes can be monitored by Bluetooth and proximity sensors, drones, you name it. But this is a huge thing. And so now we have cyber risk directly impacting all aspects of construction. Because imagine if I can hack the autonomous drones and bring them down. Imagine if I can create a work stoppage. We had a small construction company basically on the Pacific, on the coast of the Pacific in California, get hit. About 100 employees bleeding $200,000 a day due to ransomware for over a week. Complete outage. Everybody got a free vacation except IT. This is what happens. So we have to understand this can impact the safety of a job site. You can be delayed. You can damage your reputation. You know what happened when Target got breached about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 90 million credit cards stolen? They threw their mechanical contractor under the bus. It's not us, it's them. And they did it on a Monday. And do you know why they did it on a Monday? I don't know why they did it on a Monday. Do you know where I was that Monday? At Target buying everything 50% off. Pro tip, when Target declares a data breach or Walmart, go shopping, everything's cheap. They want you in the store. On top of it, we are seeing a massive increase. My friend Matt mentioned that this is the #2 targeted vertical in the world. Outside of government, it's finance, healthcare, construction, round robin, take your pick. And here's why. Because they look at construction as having a lot of cash on hand, on hard deadlines from GCs, and so you want to pay as fast as humanly possible to get up and running. On top of it, the world understands the culture generally of construction companies, or at least what construction companies were, which is fast and loose, friendly, fun, not really rigid, not really security-minded. You're an easy target. Hospitals and healthcare get hit because if the hospital gets ransomed and they don't pay, people die. That's why they're #2. So, let's talk about this. I don't want you to forget who you are. You are critical to the engine of the economy. The engine of the economy, your economy, my economy, the global economy, governments, is technology. Technology is the engine of the economy. And think about it. In terms of your company, without technology, you can't collaborate, you can't coordinate, you can't bill, you can't receive money, you can't communicate. You are critical to that. You are building the data centers. You are maintaining the core infrastructure that allows the engine of the economy to work. That's who you are. That's why you can't take cybersecurity for granted. Without you, we're screwed. And you need to understand this. Cybersecurity is the shield for the economy. We are the early warning detection system on the car when you're going to hit a tree. Then we are the safety belt and the airbag and the door locks. You can't have an engine and a car without that. Make sure you know who you are. And so with that, I want to talk about what you can do very quickly, and this is my pretty much last slide, about what you can start doing right now as a leader. First things first, you have to set the tone for risk at the leadership level. This has to be top down. So many cybersecurity adventures or ventures in corporations fail when the leadership doesn't buy in. Understand your risks. Understand how important this is to you. Understand what you're protecting. Do you know where all of your assets are, from iPads and phones to computers to even tools on the job site? If you don't know where your technology is and how much you have of it, how do you know it's being protected? How do you know it's being updated? How do you know it's not being stolen? Make sure you've got a good asset management solution in your life. And on top of it, create accountability. One of the biggest problems we see in data breaches is executives arguing. Oh, the database should come up so we can continue the job and keep working. No, you idiot, the email should come up so we can communicate with our customers and let them know what's going on. Figure this out ahead of time. Designate a single leader. One of the biggest problems that we see in cybersecurity is essentially when executives pick up phones and incidents and start just delaying the IT team. Can we get up? Can we get up? Can we get up? No, shut up, let them speak, have a plan. So unbelievably important. And implement proper cyber hygiene. Build a culture of awareness. Phishing training should be random, once a month. And it's not a gotcha moment, it's a we're in this together moment. We are all in this together. A rising tide raises all boats. And I have literally seen companies get hacked and the person didn't speak up. And when we ask why, they say, well, I was afraid I'd get fired. I was afraid to get slapped down. I can move one packet of data around the globe 5 times in 1 second. That's how fast these things move. Understand that incident readiness. Understand that you're going to prepare for boom, whatever that is. If it's a cyber attack, a natural disaster, an event, whatever it is, be ready for that. Understand that and evaluate that risk. What are your insider risks? We have seen people rip off corporations for millions over years. We've seen external hackers break in, third parties, your supply chain gets breached. It's not my fault, it's their fault. Make sure you understand that and evaluate that. And set a proper budget. That's my last point. Understand financial risk modeling. And if you have a CFO that treats nickels like manhole covers, they need a talking to. This is based on risk and ROI. Make sure you do that. And don't forget, you are part of the engine of the economy. You are part of the critical infrastructure that allows us to exist in society. And without you, technology cannot function. With you, I am very cold in the winter and I am very hot in the summer, and I hate that. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Please welcome to the stage from Transfr, founder and CEO, Bharani Rajakumar.
All right. How's everyone feeling? That was an amazing presentation. This presentation is going to be less intense and focused on workforce development. So my name is Bharani Rajakumar. I'm the founder of a company called Transfr, Inc. And I want to start by thanking the AEM, John Summers from AEM, and Matt Abeles from ABC, the Association of Builders and Contractors, for inviting me to speak here today about workforce development. So ABC has been a leader in workforce development for a number of years. And at ConExpo, we've all been talking about just these incredibly fascinating robotics, machines, automation, all of the above. But ABC understands something even deeper than that. And that's the future of construction depends on its workforce and the operators. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're surrounded by some of the most advanced machines, right? Like the machines are evolving, but one of the questions that we all have is the way we train people and our workforce model, is that evolving at the same pace? And most people would say it's not. We've got, how many of you guys have seen autonomous equipment when you walk the floor, right? You've seen AI-enabled fleets, you've seen smarter systems, but one of the questions that people have is who's gonna run them? Right? Who's going to manage these fleets? Who's going to orchestrate them? And I think one of the most important questions is who's going to protect us from them when they try to take over the world. First of all, everyone's hand should go up. That should be all of our jobs, because it's a real threat. The shortage of labor that we have, it's not really just about headcount. It's also about workers who are ready and able to do the job. And over the next 365 days, it's not just going to be about the machines that you buy, but it's going to be about the folks that operate them. And that's what's going to separate people who can move faster and scale faster from those who can't. So you're investing millions of dollars in equipment, but the new hires who show up on day one. Like, I've never heard of a supervisor that has said, yeah, I've got plenty of time to train the new person who just started, right? And that's what we want to kind of fix, because if you don't have that person who's trained and ready to go on day one, you know, they may make a mistake, insurance costs are really high, you have to do the rework, that eats into your margin, and then companies just, you know, they win by having, you know, a more competitive workforce. Obviously, you want to buy better machines, but you want to have people who can operate those machines. So that's kind of why ABC chose to partner with us, because we have the ability to train people, and we use virtual reality to do that. We bring simulation-based training nationwide to help prepare the next generation of workers. We're in 48 states, over 1,100 locations. We've trained thousands of learners. Over 1 million simulations have been completed. We work with schools, employers, workforce development systems, all because preparation can be a real competitive advantage, especially when you're going on the job site. Because on day one, the last thing you want to do is spend your time training folks. So the way it works is, and we're going to show you in a second, you have young people, the next generation, put on the headset, and they're basically able to do the job, kind of like a pre-apprenticeship program before they set foot on the site. And why is that important? Well, first of all, they're going to be practicing safety, so they're not going to hurt themselves or hurt somebody else when they get on the site. They're building muscle memory. And of course, the performance is tracked, so you can make sure people are able to do exactly what you need them to do before they get on the site. So what we're talking about here isn't a theory. It's not something that's like coming in the future. It's something that's already being done. So ABC works in states across the country, and in North Florida, for example, they put together a huge kind of convention and conference called World of Work, where they had thousands of students put on the headset, and they weren't watching other people do the work. When you're in the simulation, you're doing it, you're operating, you're interacting, and that kind of curiosity is actually useful in helping people get into the industry. Because one of the big challenges, if you guys heard Mike Rowe speaking earlier, is historically, people were not looking into the skilled trades, manufacturing, agriculture. They were considered dirty jobs. But now when you have folks go in through these simulations and they realize, like, actually, this is something that I like doing, this is something I can do, now you've got different types of workers coming into the workforce, folks that may have not considered the opportunities before. So sparking curiosity is a huge part of why getting folks in these simulated environments is really useful. Because the workforce is the foundation of the industry. And these things, they might feel game-like, but here's the thing that's really important. In order to become qualified and credentialed, you actually have to pass tests like the OSHA 10 safety exam. And so all of these experiences are aligned to things that actually matter in the real workforce. In New Mexico, for example, they actually have one of the ABC chapters there actually has individuals who put on the headset, do the pre-apprenticeship program, sit for the certification exam, and then get employed. So this is not theory, this is real reality. And so to kind of illustrate the point, I'm gonna play this video of one of your peers. It's a CEO of an electrical contracting company called Trio in Houston, Texas. So if we could just play the video.
We started our pre-apprenticeship program, an apprenticeship program several years back, graduated over 300 adults from our adult education program, and we have over 784 students currently enrolled in our pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship training programs. We're in 26 different locations across Texas, and our enrollment for both adults and high school students continues to grow, so we're very excited.
My name is David Marino. I'm the foreman for the prefab shop at Trio Electric. Most of my trainees that come through the prefab shop here have been doing pretty well out there, and a lot of it probably does have to do with the VR sets. VR would have been very helpful when I was coming up as an apprentice, as to I cannot learn without having my hands on it. I like to learn the theory, and I like to see why we do it the way we do. So it would, you would learn something in the classroom, and it would be months later when you figure out why it is they told you to do it this way. Myself, I need to know right away. I like to see why we do things the way we do them.
My name's Brian Richardson. I'm the construction service manager. I design the installation drawings for the field so that they can install things more efficiently, quickly, more cost effective. When I first heard that Trio was going to be using VR simulations, I was somewhat skeptical at first, just because I know that there's a lot of like muscle memory and things like that that comes with doing anything manual labor for construction and stuff like that. But when I got a chance to try it, I realized how you could kind of build a lot of that muscle memory and at least the steps on what you would do in actually installing conduit and receptacles and things like that. So yeah, the VR training was very important. Seemed like it for Lauren as she came in, and the experience that she had in the field, that seemed to pair up really well.
My name is Lauren Denise Tanner, and I'm a fourth-year apprentice electrician at Trio Electric, and I currently work at the prefab shop at Trio Electric. I don't have any previous electrical exposure. My introduction to the electrical field was when I went to my high school, and they have a 2-year program that Trio Electric sponsors, so I ended up taking that, and that was my first step into the electrical field. I do feel like VR prepared me for my real job and the tasks that I do within my job, but it definitely helped me feel more comfortable when I see certain materials on site, or when I do certain tasks like bending pipe and cutting MC cable. It did help me feel much more comfortable. I did have hands-on training in class, but we did do mostly VR, but it did definitely help me recognize more of what I do touch on the day-to-day basis of my job.
My name is Michael Cox. I work here at Trio as an apprentice electrician. I work at the prefab shop doing small projects. I lead a small team here as well, working on overhead specifically. The VR definitely helped me with the real-world tasks out there in the job sites. Without that, I really do believe I'd be a lot more lost than I was before. With every apprentice, it is pretty intimidating, especially you're brand new on the job site, you don't know much at all. But with that VR training, that kind of clicks back in your head, I feel a lot more prepared for my job now. In ways of being able to complete tasks, be able to learn different things, because it also introduces you into ways of learning things differently. Such as like doing mathematics in certain ways. You know, you would have your way of doing it, but then they show you one way and you're like, okay, that's another way I can do something that kind of goes in hand with something else, you know. And that helps out a lot more than people would think, actually. What it felt like to have a job here at Trio after my training was, it was interesting when it first started, because I was, like I said, I was brand new, didn't know anything, I was pretty intimidated. But luckily for me, I started here at the shop. And so we started off with small steps, and I just started working my way up further and further and further. And I said, okay, now we're going to send you out to the field. And then I was like, okay, cool. So I went out to the field, and then that's when I learned all the overhead stuff. And I started running overhead pipe and boxes, and I learned how to do one line. And one line is like distribution power to the whole building. And that was a pretty interesting learning process as well. The most exciting thing about being an electrician is being able to actually work with my hands and be able to move around. I can't sit still for too long.
Cool, thank you.
The other exciting part is,
you know, some of the things that you heard in that video, right? Like, first of all, it started in the classroom. You had people who had never done the job before. And you also had, you know, a group of people, like a non-traditional workforce. You had new people coming to the workforce that non-traditional candidates that you might have not thought of before. And so all that stuff is really, really powerful. And it's, you know, the main reason you should care about this kind of training is because it's effective, right? It helps people get up to speed faster. It helps people retain the information for longer periods of time. And it helps them be able to do the job more accurately once they come on the site, which is ultimately what everybody wants. You know, the ability to ramp people up faster and make fewer mistakes, I mean, all of that obviously impacts your margin. But the other thing, you know, we are a mission-driven company, that we'd say is the impact that you're going to have on your community. A lot of these folks might not be considering the opportunities that you and your companies have to offer. And the reality is, like, the opportunities, the job offers that you guys have are life-changing for people across America. And you may know that there is a huge shortage of qualified, skilled labor, but there isn't a shortage of demand. And so that's kind of the problem that we hope to solve by working with folks in this room, and definitely with our partnership with ABC. So, you know, the autonomous technology, that's still, that is coming. It's super fast. It's the future of construction. But it's not machine versus man, right? It's more about machines plus humans, you know, because if we upgrade all the machines and don't upgrade the operators, you're going to be limiting your ability to scale your businesses. So if you're investing millions of dollars in equipment this year, you know, the question that you probably have to yourself is, what are you doing to invest in your workforce too? Because the machines are ready. And I think what you have to ask yourself is your workforce ready? So thank you guys for having me today, and I look forward to sticking around and following up on the conversation. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage from Zacua Ventures, GP and founding partner, Vivin Hegde.
Hello, everyone. Third day of the conference, fag end of the day, and nobody's sleeping yet. Thank you for that. I'm Vivin Hegde, GP and founding partner at Zacua Ventures. We had a lot of wonderful presentations today, 6 different speakers talking about different technology aspects. And what I want to do is pull it all together and talk about the future of construction from a technology perspective. And at Zacua, we sit in a very unique vantage point because we are the only truly global VC who's focused on construction tech, right? What that does is it helps us identify patterns which emerge in different parts of the world. I know what's getting funded in Tokyo. We see what's being adopted in the Middle East. We see what's coming out of India as well as North America. And that helps us make better decisions. And couple that, our partnership with some of our investors like Trimble, who's sitting here. Thank you, Chris. And a lot of other major built environment partners, it helps us look around the curve. And that is exactly what a VC wants to do, to see how technology is evolving over a period of time. Over the last hour and a half, we spoke about different types of technology, whether it's autonomy, you look at cybersecurity, autonomy, drones, and so on and so forth. But technology, without being a solution, is just a science experiment, right? You want to look, when a GC tries to buy something, he doesn't want to buy autonomy. He wants to buy a solution, right? If we are not able to adapt these technologies to make it construction specific, to make it integrate with the workflows, to make it usable, then we're not solving the problems they need to be, right? And to make it truly useful, you need to start thinking about what are the pain points. Where do we start? And we've spoken about this quite a few times today. Labor, by far, is the biggest pain point that exists in this industry. 51%, that's the number of investors who we spoke to said labor is the biggest pain point. And once you identify that labor is the biggest pain point, you start thinking about what do we do to solve this, right? And this is where the capital shift is happening. As in the past years, we talk about lots of other things like sustainability. We talk about digitization. There's a lot of topics which gain attention. But when we speak to people today, the 2 most important topics that people are paying attention to, one is AI, and AI in the agentic phase is autonomy, is automation of workflows at the back end. And the second is robotics, right? So we are looking at automation both in the software phase as well as in the hardware phase, and that is where the capital is moving today. So the capital follows problems, and the problem today by far is labor shortage. And today, during a presentation, we will talk about how we think about software and hardware and the adoption in this space. But the fact of the matter is, there isn't one size fits all, right? Just give me 1 second. We're missing a slide, sorry. Sorry about that. There isn't a one size which fits all. Each of the geographies have differing problems, which influence how adoption works. If you look at Asia, most of the problems that they face are because of how the demographies are structured. Their population expansion has happened at such a rapid pace that we can't build fast enough. You need more housing, you need more infrastructure, you need amenities which need to serve a vast majority of the population. Asia, for example, is half of the world's population. So that drives a lot of technology adoption. If you look at Europe, it's slightly different. Europe talks about aging population, they talk about sustainability, so adoption patterns evolve based on how that trajectory is present in Europe. US is much more commercially focused. Being the capitalist country that we are, our solutions will not be adopted for other reasons other than economics, and that has to be present in this market to drive that, right? But US is fragmented. There is a patchwork of regulations which we need to overcome in order to be able to adopt these solutions. So it's very important to understand that when we're thinking about adoption, we can't think about it as a one solution. We have to think about it as solutions which can be adopted in different regions. I'll go back to talking about two stacks. And the first stack that I want to talk about is software, right? Software has evolved tremendously in the last 15 to 20 years. If you go back 15, 20 years, everything was paper-based. So residing in silos, paper-based, are very easy to use for that particular person, but the information was not shared with anyone. Then came the next stage of evolution where we started digitizing this and people started getting access to it. So company-wide sharing of information or project-wide sharing of information started becoming easier. Then we wanted to extract information from this. We moved to analytics. But each of these stages did not really reduce our work, right? When you digitized it, you had more accessibility. When you had analytics, you had more insights, but you still needed humans to be doing this work. And I go back to the first point where the biggest problem we have is labor shortage. Right? If you're creating more work across the software stack, that is not solving a problem, that is making your process more efficient, but it's not solving a problem. And that's why the phase that we're looking at, the agentic phase, is transformative. So in this phase, we're not talking about adding work, we're talking about removing work. And that substitution becomes really, really important, right? And it's not just happening in one part of the workflow. You look at it from design, you're talking about feasibility analysis, you're talking about automated design, you talk about bidding estimation in pre-construction, you talk about the construction phase, where there's payments, where there's progress monitoring. It's there in all of these aspects. And even the operations phase, you talk about better productivity, better building design, better operations, predictive maintenance. So AI today is not existing in silos, it exists across the board. And in all of these areas, it is trying to reduce the workload that you have. And this is the most important part, and especially if there's startups in this room, right? It's become so much easier to build solutions today. A startup can be created very quickly. Features can be created in days rather than weeks and months. So if you're just thinking about workflow integration, your defensibility is zero. It just does not exist today because it's very easy. You take Claude, you take Lovable, you take a lot of these other platforms. It has become very, very easy to set up websites or features and so on and so forth. So unless you own the authoring layer, unless you are close to the data layer, you don't have survivability. And if you're close to the data layer, you can actually work on substitution. And that is what drives value in today's environment. And that is why agentic revolution is changing a lot of things that past digitization revolutions have not changed. But that said, software is great, but you cannot prompt a brick wall, right? In construction, we move atoms, we don't move bits. To create software, you need data centers, you need power sources, you need the energy, you need the grid lines, right? To live, we need buildings. To travel, you need roads. You need infrastructure, you need housing, you need commercial buildings, and that can't just be done through software. So regardless of how many LLMs are there, at least as of now, I cannot prompt a brick wall into existence, right? And that is why robotics becomes important. And extremely excited to launch the construction robotics report today. So what we've done is we've mapped all of the construction robotics startups in the world. You're getting an exclusive preview. So I'll give you a few seconds. You can scan this. It is live as of today. So what this report talks about is the different categories of robotics, what is trending, what we see hopefully will happen in the future as well. And it's taken us 3-4 months of work. Very happy to be working with Hegde and 94 Ventures to release this report today. And this is an endeavor that we have on constantly bringing more knowledge and education to this industry. And talking about robotics, even in robotics, it has followed a trajectory which in some ways is similar to the trajectory followed by software, right? We started with very constrained spaces where you had fixed robots which are set up in manufacturing facilities. So think about automotive factories, right? There, this has become extremely common today, right? Today, you won't see many automotive factories which are not fully automated. So you had fixed robots with fixed activities that we're starting to do. But as things started developing, they started going from factories to warehouses. So warehouses are still very defined spaces, but then you have mobility, right? So that's the second stage of evolution of robots. The third stage is going from structured environments to unstructured environments. What that means is you need to have the ability to sense the environment around you. That's where you have data-driven perception, right? And now we have come to the last stage, which is embodied AI or embodied intelligence, which is the robotic versions of the agentic landscape, where robots who can start thinking, right? And that's why if you think about Figure AI and some of these new companies which are setting this up, in the future, they will do tasks in an automated manner. And that is the land that we're entering into. As exciting it is, it will not come without hiccups, but super excited that we are on the cusp of a huge change, not just on the software side, but also on the hardware side. And here again, it's not just happening in 1 or 2 areas. You look at layout, you look at groundworks, you look at rebar, it's happening end to end. It's happening in different trades, it's happening outdoors, it's happening indoors. So this is something that is catching up at a pace that we wouldn't have expected even 2 or 3 years back. And if you think about robots itself, we think about it as 3 categories. There are the plotters, and these are your layout tools, so they help with your planning. They're high accuracy, linked to your BIM, they set out your plan. So these are foundational in terms of doing other activities. Then come the grinders. These are actually the ones who perform the task. So these have manipulation, these are super rugged, are able to carry weights, or are able to manipulate material, and they are the ones which are performing the work. And finally, you have the scouts. The scouts they're looking at quality. They're inspecting everything. They're talking about progress monitoring. They're talking about inspection, checking on quality, and so on. So we're seeing robots also being there from the planning phase to the operationalizing phase. And that makes it applicable to a lot more use cases. And the robot itself has evolved over a period of time. Back in the days, you had to write custom code to build lots of different types of robots. Today, if you look at the different facets of robotics, everything has evolved, right? If you look at sensing, these are like eyes. LiDARs, the cost of LiDARs has gone down, cost of sensors have gone down. If you look at something like planning, path planning is now very readily available. Task scheduling is very readily available. Manipulation, there's different form factors, different kind of operations, and there are companies specializing in manipulation as well. And geolocation has almost been solved in terms of both in GPS-denied environments as well as GPS-available environments. So this all becoming commoditized has made that even setting up robotic companies has become far easier than it used to in the past. And what I also wanted to show is all of what I'm talking about is not theory. What I'm talking about is actually happening in the field today, and I wanted to show a few real-world examples of how this is happening on the field. Could you please play the video for me?
The only constant in human history is acceleration. In just 1 century, we shattered the limits of scale, speed, and reach. Yet, how we build our world was left behind. Once the art of building defined epics. Today, it stands in the shadow of its former glory. We cannot build the future with the tools of the past.
So these are all real life examples. These are not simulations. These are not experiments in the lab. These are actually deployed on job sites. And that's why when I say robotics is that now, it's not tomorrow, it's today. We're already seeing these deployments happen and happening on a lot of job sites, right? But you have to be thoughtful when you deployments, right? Construction is not a business of taking risk. Construction is a business of mitigating risk. So I know all of you, when you think about robots, you want to be very careful of deployments. So there are a few things that we need to be mindful of when we think about deployment. One, you need to be very clear about the scope that you're choosing. It has to be narrow scope. It has to be very specified. You need to know what problem you're solving when you're deploying robots. Two, you have to have a champion. You have to have resources. You have to think about who is going to be deploying these robots, and they need to have the skill levels to be able to understand the robot and deploy that on the job site. And three, don't treat it as an experiment. Treat it as a critical tool that you are deploying on job sites, which is part of your critical path. Because if it's an experiment, nobody pays attention to it, right? This is something that's changing your workflow for the future, and you need to be invested in making that happen. And on that note, I hope to partner with all of you in building the future together. And thank you for having me, and look forward to catching up with all of you off stage. Thank you.
Please welcome back to the stage, Matthew and John.
CONEXPO! Yeah! Let the future begin! CONEXPO! Yeah! We're all in to win! Brought to you by Matt and John!
It's so ridiculous. All right, so hopefully everybody had a good time. Kind of starting to lose my voice, it sounds like, a little bit. So we're just going to go through a couple more slides here, just really quickly to kind of wrap things up. So integrated job site of tomorrow, basically an intersection of autonomy, AI, humans, all of the above, right? So I think it's a pretty powerful statement here. You know, the future of construction is here, especially, you know, a couple of the folks on stage mentioned walking around the show and seeing some stuff. It's automated, connected, secure, and human-centric. So you want to just run us through the topics really quick that we just covered?
Yeah, and another thing to note, so on everything we're doing with AEM and with ABC, all the technologies you saw today, one of the big things that we piloted this year is we brought a bunch of students around to see all these different technologies, innovations. We brought them to 17 meetings with different CEOs, and the goal is in 3 years that with this partnership, we can bring 100 students. So one of the things I'm very excited about. But today, I just thought it was amazing. We got to see, like I said, some of the leading experts when it comes to AI, connected job sites, drones. I mean, these are some of the best of the best. One of the things I ask is if you guys have any feedback on this, to please send it to us. If there's topics we missed, let us know. But the whole goal here was to give you guys a full, like I said at the beginning, action-packed, here's everything going on, impacting construction from all angles of technology, innovation, and that the stuff is today. We decided very early on we want to do technology education on what's impacting everyone today and what the outlook in the future looks like.
So we had 7 different presentations. You'll notice there's 8 graphics up there. So I'm going to focus on the last one that I added, which is partnership enabled. A lot of these companies are working with different organizations. I think that Tim from Agtonomy talking about working with some OEMs. This industry is really becoming a collaborative effort amongst multiple technology players, equipment OEMs, ABC, AEM partnership on putting this whole thing together here today on the stage. So just something to watch as more collaborative efforts need to happen to keep advancing this industry forward. So our info's up there. Shoot us an email. Love feedback. And I'd like to welcome all of our speakers back up on stage for one little last hurrah.
Yeah.